Hi, this is Michael P. Coleman, Content Director for Brother Be Well. Thanking you for checking out this series, this trauma and healing series brought to you by Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative. Hi, I'm Michael P. Coleman, Content Director for Brother Be Well. Today, in one of a series of Brother Be Well conversations about trauma and healing made possible by the support of Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative, we're exploring mindfulness and meditation as means for healing from trauma. Joining me for this conversation is one of my best buddies, and she's also a Brother Be Well mindfulness expert, Grace Cecilio. Grace, what's up? How are you doing? Welcome back to Brother Be Well.
Thank you. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Always good to see you. You ready to get into this?
Let's do it.
You know, I've got to say before we get started, mindfulness expert. One day I want to call myself a mindfulness expert when I grow up. I'm getting better at it, but I'm excited about showing everybody and talking to everybody in our audience, our family about exactly what mindfulness and meditation are.
I'm excited too.
Let's get right on into here, if you don't mind, Grace. The term mindfulness has come into the zeitgeist fairly recently, I think, but some use it interchangeably with the word meditation. They're very distinct and quite different from each other, as you well know. I'm wondering if you, as we start out, if you define and differentiate between the two terms, mindfulness and meditation, for the Brother Be Well family.
Absolutely. So for me, the biggest distinction is mindfulness is more of like a state of being. So it's something that we can implement at any time. So you could be washing your dishes and paying attention to the water running on your skin, feeling the soap, the sponge, whatever is happening in that moment. It's that awareness and being fully present in the moment. So that is mindfulness. And then meditation is the practice that can be a mindful practice, really sitting in silence or sitting with your thoughts and allowing space bring that awareness into your mind and into your space.
It sounds really, really fascinating, and you make it easy to differentiate. Do you think, is it safe for me then to think of meditation as kind of the path to mindfulness? Mindfulness is the destination in my mind, and meditation helps us get there.
I think I would say yes and no. So that is like a overall overarching way to think of it. I
Hmm.
think there are multiple paths to mindfulness. And I also don't believe necessarily that mindfulness is a destination
Got
because,
it.
like I said, it's like a state of being. So we don't achieve mindfulness. We don't get to this space of mindfulness and then we're quote unquote experts, masters, whatever that case might be. It's really just a continuous practice and state of allowing yourself to be in that space.
I really like the way you've helped me really understand what we're talking about here. A little bit later, I'll talk to you about how, as I was even preparing for this talk, and I found myself, instead of like I used to do, rehearsing questions and worried about what the production was going to be, or thinking about a production earlier that we had done here at Brother Be Well, I was focusing on the sound of the words in my head, how they resonated,
Mm.
how they reverberated in my brain, my body on the chair, my feet on the floor. And I realized I really am incorporating some of what you've taught me about mindfulness into everything that I'm doing. So I appreciate
Yes,
you so much. I know, right, Grace? I was so excited. So excited
that's
about it.
amazing.
Can you tell me then how quickly one might see, I won't talk about getting to that destination anymore. How quickly will could someone see a shift once they start to practice something like meditation?
That's a beautiful question. And I think it really depends because oftentimes when we're on this journey of awareness and building our awareness, it can almost feel like we're going backwards. Because once you start noticing, you're noticing how much you don't do it. And that feels almost disheartening for a lot of us because we're not getting better at it. And the truth is, that is getting better because you're noticing more, you're paying
Mm.
attention more, you're seeing what it is as it's happening. And you might notice that shift, but to really feel and embody that shift is a whole other question. So, I mean, I could say you could notice it right away, but it is really nuanced in the way that we just have this path in our mind and like the stuff that we're used to. It gets really challenging to start shifting your perspective or thinking of things in a different way.
Thank you so much for kind of letting me off the hook because from what you just said, I'm becoming more mindful instead of sort of beating myself up. I should give myself a little more grace when I catch myself that is really being mindful. That's becoming more mindful. Would you
Yes.
agree? I
Yes,
love
absolutely.
I love it when you smile and clap. That lets me know I'm on the right path. I'm on the right track here, Grace. I really do appreciate it.
Of course.
Let's get to the next one. I want to talk about what I call the wandering mind. I was just talking about my preparing or rehearsing for a project, and I'm prone to do it. I tend to think about the time that we were going to get started today, and so I'm thinking ahead sometimes that in 2 hours I'll be doing this, in 3 hours I'll be doing that, or remembering something that relates to what I'm doing, and I'm learning to just really be in the moment, as I said earlier. How can you suggest, because I don't know that I could tell someone what my tips are to bring myself back out of the past and the present. Can you give us some tips for intercepting what I call the wandering mind? Because mine tends to go all over the place.
Yes, absolutely. So, going back to that idea of meditation as a path towards mindfulness, really embedding these practices of focus can really help us in the moment when we are in that wandering mind. So, for example, a meditation that I started with was just focusing on my breath, this little space between your lips and your nose, and doing that for like hours on end. You don't have to start with hours, maybe just 5 minutes, but really paying attention and focusing on that specific area so that you can notice when your mind wanders away. And then you can be like, oh, yeah, I was supposed to be thinking about this part of my lip or my face. And I can bring myself back to that. And it's really like this anchor that brings us to this task or this moment. So that can translate, the practice of that can translate into conversation or into different discussions, spaces where we're finding ourselves in this focused space, conversing with one another. And it's a little more refined with your tools to be able to notice then, oh, I'm not paying attention to anything that Michael is saying anymore. My mind has wandered. Let me bring it back because now I am used to having that anchor.
I love thinking about it as an anchor. So to make sure I understand, you said your upper lip. So when you talked about breathing, you can feel there the inhale and the exhale, and being aware of that sensation is what's going to help pull you back into that present moment.
Absolutely. And this can be any anchor. That was just one example. So it might be while you're washing dishes. I love using that as an example. But anyway, while you're washing dishes, you're paying attention to the action of you washing dishes. And then when your mind wanders, you're like, oh, I'm not thinking about the dishes anymore. I'm thinking about what I'm going to cook for breakfast tomorrow. Let me bring it back. Or it could be even while you're reading a book. I often notice that too when I'm reading words on the page and I read a whole paragraph. I'm like, what did I even say? I wasn't even paying attention to that. That's also a practice of anchoring into the present and allowing yourself the space to then bring yourself back and come back to what you were originally doing.
One of the things I love about working and talking with you, Grace, is you're so great at coming up with different examples that will connect with different people. I, for instance, the dishwashing one does not work because I don't wash dishes. My idea is putting them in the dishwasher and taking them out. But based on what you just said, I can be mindful about that. I can start with my stack of dishes and mindfully put them there and be very aware of what I'm doing instead of listening to the clock on the wall or paying attention to a television broadcast, just being really mindful and in that moment as well, correct?
Absolutely. And I'll give you one more example. This is something that I am guilty of doing too, is while I'm watching TV, and then all of a sudden my phone comes up and I'm like, wow, I have like two, maybe three screens in front of me with my laptop too. And I'm not paying attention to anything specifically. So it's really fine tuning your focus. And I think with so many things going on, it can be really hard to narrow it down. So it's no wonder that our mind begins to wander as a practice, or as a default, actually, because we're so used to having a million things happening at once.
And I think you've just done such a beautiful job. I don't think you even realize that you as a mindfulness expert just said you catch yourself with those multiple screens. So we should all give ourselves some grace if our mindfulness expert occasionally catches herself wandering, the mind wandering, then we can be okay with catching ourselves too. So thanks a lot, Grace. Really
Oh,
appreciate that.
of course.
I do it all the time with the multiple screens. I'm horrible, and I've even got a screen now that I wear on my wrist, right? So if someone texts me, if I've got every notification on, it shows up here. It buzzes in my pocket. If I've got an iPad in front of me, and I realize, as you said, I'm not really paying attention to any one of those three, let alone the task at hand. So I've got to kind of start to limit some things, put some blinders on, so to speak, and focus on what I'm
Mm,
doing and on the present moment.
beautiful.
Let's talk about some studies that I've learned about, specifically for people who have experienced trauma, and I'm one of those people. I'm learning that mindful meditation can sometimes exacerbate symptoms of traumatic stress. And so, as long as we had you here, I wanted to ask you about that. What are your thoughts about that? My understanding is that being very mindful and in the moment might inadvertently trigger some of the more repressed memories and thoughts that relate to a traumatic experience or trauma. What are your thoughts about that?
I think you're absolutely right. That is possible. And in those scenarios, especially when we're thinking of like PTSD, we really want to create a space where we feel safe enough to dive into that present moment or into that repressed space. So oftentimes I suggest having a trained professional with you or a guide when you're starting to explore something like that, especially if you're not used to being just with yourself. I know a lot of people take medications, or they have various coping strategies that they've adopted to help manage some of that pain or some of that the traumatic effects on their lives. So if that's something that this person is going through or you are going through, then definitely seek professional help to guide you through that and be there for you, almost like a safety net, so that it's not so you don't go deeper than you're ready for, and you can almost like training wheels ease into it and have a guide there to really get you into the space in a safe, really nurturing way.